Hi, everybody. This is Beth Green, otherwise known as Granny Rocks.
And hello, this is Sweet Baby James, and welcome to Inner Revolution, changing the world from the inside out. And I will be in the other room since Beth will be on the headphones the whole time, and I won't hear her.
And that's because we're completing our two-part interview of Chuck Collins. Monday, we broadcast the first part where Chuck was talking about connection and why he would give up all this money. This guy was born in the top 1%. He could have inherited a fortune, but he decided to give his fortune away when he was 26 years old because he could see there was something wrong. But what? So this is going to be so fascinating and the surprise. Now, in our second, thank you, Sweet Baby Jean.
Thank you.
So, in the second part of the interview, we're going to get down deeper than we did last time to try to understand why a guy gave away his power, money, right, and privilege. So, I'm really excited to introduce the show to you. And stay to the end, because at the very end, I'm going to wrap this thing up. And we're going to see how all of this applies to us. Not that we have fortunes to give away, or anything to give away, actually. I think most of us are barely hanging in there. But I just want to say that Chuck Collins has written a book, which I don't have with me right now, but I showed you last time, called Born on Third Base. And it's about being born to wealth and privilege and what a difference it makes in your life compared to those who were not born with that. And he is a program director at the Institute for Policy Studies. But we have a lot of territory to cover tonight, so I'm going to now hopefully not make too much of a mess of this because there's a lot of logistics I have to take care of here, and I'm going to bring you on to part 2 of Chuck Collins' interview. Why did you see it and most of your peers did not? And you told that story in the beginning when I was still able to, before my eyes went like this, about being with poor people who helped each other. And I thought, oh my God, there it is. You know, that was a formative experience for you. And tell that story, that how you were inspired by the people, you know, it's the potluck revolution. You know, everybody brings what they have and takes what they need, you know.
Yes.
Anyway, so tell our audience about that because they haven't read your book yet.
Yeah. Well, one is, I'm not sure I can answer your question of how I became who I am. I think that's actually a hard question for any of us, is like, how did we become who we are? I'm still trying to
help you figure that out if you want.
Yeah.
Because I had a feeling that the reason you didn't answer me is because you didn't have an answer.
Well, I think when it's maybe the part where it's like, how come me and not others? I actually think a lot of other people experience and see the same things. They don't necessarily feel any kind of sense of agency to do anything about it. Like there's this week in New Yorker, there's an article about Abigail Disney, who's somebody I've known for a long time, and she in the article talks about, she thought about doing what I did, giving away her wealth, but she was afraid, and she also didn't have the support system to kind of venture out in that way. So I just feel like I was lucky. I felt like I was helped.
Did you have that support system? Did your...
You know, I think that I had enough people around, and I had people who were working class, who loved me, who were outside of the systems of wealth and the subculture, and sort of invited me. It's kind of like the Christmas Carol, right? Take your hand and show you, you know, the rest of the world. But the story, I think
Buddha, who left the, right?
Yeah.
Who left the palace and went out to the world.
Yeah.
And wanted to deal with suffering.
Yeah, and it was like, oh my gosh, there's suffering in the world, you know. But I did have, like, so the experience, I was working with these mobile home park tenants around New England, Massachusetts and Vermont and New Hampshire, who didn't own the land underneath their mobile home parks. And my job when I was like 25, 26 was to work with these groups of tenants and help them buy their mobile home parks. And what I what I learned from them is these folks did have solidarity. They had a sense of reciprocity. We're all in it together. Everyone, an injury to one is an injury to all. All the things that you were talking about, and growing up in an affluent family, I had been around charity, which to me is kind of like a straight arm. Here's the money, stay away, kind of, and generosity,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I've never been around reciprocity in that
Yeah.
way. And in a way, I was like, wow, I want what these people have.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how do I get there? And then it became like, oh, the wealth is a barrier to my having authentic connections with other people.
Well,
And
there you just explained it. Keep going,
yeah,
Chuck. I think you wanted what they had,
but I think everybody wants that.
but
And
they
they
don't
don't
all
have,
see it. They
well,
don't.
or they don't have the support. They don't, a lot of owning class, the training of the wealthy
Yeah.
is the training that young wealthy people have is to be afraid of those people want what you have. They will take it if they can.
Exactly.
All of that, all what you said at the very, very
Yeah.
beginning, there's a certain layer of fear
Yeah.
and physical isolation. You're going to live behind a wall. You don't go play with those kids over there. Those are the bad kids,
Yes.
You need to go to your country club and hang out with the kids that are like you, who have the same pathologies as you. And, you're going to be forcibly disconnected, you might have a nanny. You might have
Yeah.
like a gardener
Yeah.
who's a working class, who has their whole humanity
Yeah.
and who loves you. And it's remarkable is how many people have an experience of a non-family member caretaker in their lives who
Cared more
represents
than their own parents sometimes.
that connection, that they didn't have that kind of love. I was fortunate. I feel like my parents were very present and loving, and my father is still alive and we're very, very close. But I think that's not, unfortunately, the case for a lot of people.
So the thing that was most striking about what you said to me, I mean, that I'm not saying this is what was most striking to others, but to me, what was most striking was that you wanted what the poor had, and that most of us are brainwashed into thinking that if you're poor, you're violent, you're dirty, you're stupid, you're, going to come down in and kill me, and you could see because of the circumstance, but also because of the upbringing you had and the loving environment that you valued love. Maybe you were taught the value of love in your family because of the way they were. And when you saw this, people helping one another, people who had very little but willing to help one another, that it must have struck the chord that was the opposite of some experience you had growing up wealthy. That maybe, I'm not getting, I'm not in a counseling situation, but maybe you had some kind of traumatic experiences yourself, or you saw them happening, and you saw something that made it scary to be in the world. And then you could feel that coming home feeling, because that when you said come home, that you felt at home with those people in that mobile home park. They were co-creating a home like a big family. And
Yeah.
and you wanted that. And so you didn't do it out of altruism. You did it out of a need.
Yeah.
Am I making any sense here?
Absolutely. I think that's, and actually, I think that's, owning class people like myself are raised to think we have everything we need.
Yes.
And that if only the rest of the world was more like us, like
Right.
as opposed to like, actually, these other people have key pieces of the puzzle that we don't have, that we need
Yeah.
to be fully human.
Yeah.
And that everybody's sort of social conditioning brings a couple pieces of that puzzle, including I actually think my conditioning is such that I'm not actually, I didn't grow up struggling for survival, which allowed me, this may, now I hope this comes across right, it allows me to sort of step back and look at the big
No, I
pictures.
totally understand. I totally
And
understand.
which is a piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
Like, it's good to have,
Yes.
and it'd be good if more people didn't have to struggle and worry, so they could pay attention to the big picture of whether, let's say, ecologically. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not to me surprising that wealthy, affluent people are involved in the environmental movement,
Right.
because they have their basic human needs met, and maybe in their families, and they're paying
Yeah.
attention to some other sign. They're taking a look at the river out the window there and saying, "How is that river?"
Yes.
So I think
Oh,
that's, it's
oh,
so,
absolutely.
yeah,
I think if I remember this correctly, Marx talked about this too. Um, that you if you can produce goods faster and faster and faster, that means you're going to have more time to think.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we can't have that, because if people think, they might look around and say, what the hell's going on here?
yeah,
You keep people on that constant survival struggle. They don't have time. They think it's a luxury to worry about the environment when, maybe you have to pee and poop in the river because there's no, and then you have to drink the water and wash your clothes, and you don't have anything else. And what are you going to do? Say, I think this is unsanitary. You know what I'm saying? So
right,
you're so engaged in that struggle. And I think what you're saying is critically important, that I call it higher consciousness. And we have to make ourselves, no matter how hard it is, rise up to see the big picture
yeah,
and get beyond the moment and stop wasting our time and energy on things that are not really important. So we
yeah,
actually have the time to think and look and organize, you know what I mean? And say, this is
absolutely, yeah,
ridiculous. I am just incensed every day. I can't even read the news. I can't stand what everybody is saying. You know what I mean? I'm thinking, what are you thinking? Why are we jockeying for power when our planet's survival is at stake? What is it's not that it doesn't matter how you vote and all of that. That isn't what I'm saying. But I'm saying we're so distracted by everything that the society holds dear and thinks
yeah,
is important, and the way that we've been taught to treat each other. Even I saw
yeah,
it in the movement, Chuck. I was in the movement for years.
yeah,
Years. I mean, till my mid-30s, I was in the women's movement and the ban the bomb and the anti-war and the tenants' rights and welfare organizing and all the, and the negativity, the anger, the despair that is in the people in the movement.
yeah.
And I can understand why, and I understand the anger, but we have to do what you're doing, which is to write. It's called, I call it, in a different context, the perspective of the eagle and the perspective of the ant.
Mm,
You have
yeah,
to have both in order to really see what's going on. And the
yeah.
highest level of consciousness is one that actually can encompass all of that. And we need each other in order to do that. Because you
And
can bring in
actually,
a piece, and I can bring in a piece, and we all can bring in a piece.
well, the thing that you were pointing out that I didn't have, though, is I didn't have the experience of authentic solidarity. And I'm not saying that exists everywhere and it exists inherently. In
Yeah.
fact, among a lot of very low income and poor communities, a lot of that's been disruptive and destroyed. What was happening in a lot of these mobile home parks was what I would characterize as authentic working class communities of interdependence. They were not so deprived that they were fighting
Yeah.
against each other.
Yes.
They had enough social capital to kind of, they own their mobile home. They figured out how to own at least the
Yeah.
mobile home. They
Yeah.
didn't own the land. and it maybe it's very similar. My friends who, of a certain generation who grew up in Brooklyn and certain neighborhoods in New York, there were healthy, stable, working class communities where, like, my friends grew up and they're like, yeah, I was poor, but we didn't know that because everyone else around us
was equally poor.
was equally poor, but also sort of like in a web together, like it wasn't so deprived that people were stealing from each other or hurting each other in an intense way. So unfortunately it doesn't exist everywhere, but for me, getting to see that was like, right, this is a key piece of the puzzle, and I want that. And I did not, and I was not raised with it.
No, it's the classic definition of communism: from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. And that's what I call the potluck revolution. But it was said way back, before me, of course. This is not new. And that when you have that, but you have to have something that you can bring together. If you don't have it, and you talked about something earlier, Chuck, which I think is so crucial, is that trauma piece. People are traumatized. Children of the wealthy have been traumatized too.
Yeah.
They are abused, they're molested, they are beaten, they are ignored, they are shunted aside. They're traumatized. The poor are traumatized. Everybody is traumatized. There is no human being. I have the advantage of having been a counselor all these years. I've seen into the hearts of people from everyone has pain. Everyone has pain. If we could only get that message across, we all are in pain. We are all suffering. We are all suffering from alienation and separation. And would people be able to abuse one another if they didn't feel disconnected to start with? And not just to feel sorry for the people who are at the bottom, but to see the abuser as having, there's some reason, there's always a reason that people behave these ways. And it goes beyond dollars and cents. It has to do with the way we are raised to see ourselves and treat one another. And this constant struggle for power, this constant struggle for safety, which is born from so much fear, either because of your own personal experience or what you've seen. It goes on, and people's drive to be safe, which makes them constantly succumb to the nonsense of society. People are constantly saying, well, how is it done? And what should you wear? And what all these shoulds, and because they're looking for safety they're looking for belonging by, what is the word that my 74-year-old brain is leaving me right now. It's when you're sort of like doing what everybody else does. It's a very simple word.
Conforming or conforming?
Conforming, yes, of course.
Okay,
And conforming to the insanity of society from the beginning of your life. See, I bring it back to when you come out of the womb and you have to cry and suddenly you have to get your needs met. They're not all met for you. If you don't make noise, you don't get your needs met. And sometimes, no matter how much noise you make, you don't get your needs met. And you learn survival strategies. And everybody learns in their family a survival strategy. Sometimes that survival strategy is to look like the weakest, because that's how you're going to get people to take care of you. And sometimes it's to look threatening. So then everybody's going to kowtow to you. Or what strings can I pull? As we develop these survival strategies as children, we bring them into life, and we continue that ad nauseum, and we don't even realize it. And this is the ego, as far as I'm concerned, because it's our sense that we're individuals, we're on our own, we have to figure out how to manipulate the world to take care of us.
Yeah.
And that is our experience. That is what we feel when we suddenly come out and we have to cry. Well, we're not used to that. We're used to all the stuff being taken care of. Well, then you go into social situations, and then you have all these social mores that keep reinforcing that. You've got to fight, you've got to win. I don't care, can be in the most expensive private school, but not every one of you is going to go to Harvard, right? Somebody's going to get the girl. Somebody's going to get on the football team. Somebody is going to strike out in Little League. Our the things that kids do is so competitive from the beginning. Our sports, everything keeps feeding that same thing of wham, 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 feed me, feed me. I've got to find my edge. And so people are terrified to give up their edge because they don't believe, because we were not raised to feel mutual support is the highest good. We weren't raised to think that our mothers actually need to rest even though we're hungry. Children not given that message. Some children are abused and don't get fed, but some children, the mother jumps. It doesn't matter if she's falling over. We're not taught to look at the needs of everybody and work together in that mutual support that you're describing. Those weren't perfect people. They had their problems, right? They bitched and moaned and did their own negative things, but they knew their survival was at stake. They couldn't keep their mobile home if they did not buy that park. And so even self-interest. But what is so astounding is that with the amount of brainwashing that we have and that old egoic behavior, people don't even realize that our survival is at stake and we're still acting like we can get away with stuff.
Yeah.
Whether you're smoking or you're eating the wrong foods or you're polluting the water and the air and you're destroying the environment or you're creating a situation where people can't afford to buy the goods and services that you're making. It's, our survival is really at stake. And the only thing that can ensure it is that community and coming together. But we have to overcome all the training, all the programming, all of that. And the trauma that has made us so much more fear-based. Oh, I can't let this one in. I can't be friends with so-and-so because I was molested as a child. You know what I mean? I'm afraid of authorities. I can't listen to her. She's just like she's my mother, and my mother abused me, or whatever it is. There's so much that we have to overcome. And you would think that survival, like the survival of the ecosystem, would be enough to wake us up. Well, evidently not.
Well, there is that, we know there's that lizard brain flight or fight sort of part of our brain. What I find is cool is, and maybe, it's sort of the new brain research into the way we're also wired for mutuality and community and connection. That if we engage in something like a barn raising or something where we're a potluck, that it stimulates another part of our brain. And that's kind of like, I think one of the ways forward is how do we have more of those experiences, the potluck experience, the mutuality experience, because that sort of
reinforces.
Yeah, that's going to be key to our survival is like, we are in a web, and what happens to you really does matter to me, and what's downstream or upstream really matters to me. And, so I think you're right. We have to find a way to go beyond the fear and the
name calling and the blaming and all of that, and the anger, and really look at this as a human problem. We have to stand up. That's why I say we need an inner revolution, because we have to stand up to the conditioning that we all have, and how easy it is to polarize, how easy it is to get into them, us.
Hey, time flies.
I
have an interview in 2 minutes and I have to be ready. So we should say farewell for this chat. But thank you so much, and carry on the inner revolution.
And you too, carry on, Chuck. And if there's anything that I can do that can help, I'm always wanting to help. If I
Thank you. Thank you for having this conversation, and for putting the word out, and for the people who listen in and are engaged with you. And I look forward to future conversations.
I hope so. And if you can let people know about our interview, once I get it up on Facebook, spread it.
Yeah, send me the link and I'll spread the word.
I will do that. Chuck,
Yeah.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Say bye to the Mackenzie River.
Wow, I think that worked. I am so thrilled. Anyway, so what do I want to say to you? So, wasn't he great? I mean, it's like, it comes really down to what we need. What we really need is connection and safety. We need to overcome our conditioning in order to get there. So, what does this have to do with us? I'll tell you what this has to do with us. When I talk about the inner revolution and I give these talks and share these ideas, very often people say, oh, yeah, yeah, that's really great, but I don't have enough money, or I can't give up anything, or I feel threatened, or, what am I going to have to do? What am I going to have to give up? And what Chuck Collins taught us tonight is that it isn't that you're giving up something, it's that you're giving up something you don't need in order to get something you do need. So take that in. Calling for an inner revolution does not mean that I'm asking you to open your home to the 12 people on the block who are poorer than you are, or to give up more of your time, or whatever. I'm saying we need to recognize that we have been accepting what we don't need instead of fighting for what we all need. And I'm going to be talking more about that in the future. So this is Wednesday, and tomorrow night, Thursday, at 7 p.m. Pacific time, we live stream Dreams of Peace, where I play the piano for everybody. And I hope that you come either before, during or after. And in terms of this show, I hope you like it, you love it, you comment. I wasn't able to do the comments during the show because it's too complicated logistically because of the program I'm using. But I will answer all of your comments afterwards and into the coming days as usual. And come back every Monday and Wednesday at 6:30 Pacific time, p.m., 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, for Inner Revolution, changing the world from the inside out, where we stop fighting for what we don't need and start coming together for what we do need. Thank you, sweet baby James, for indulging me with this headset thing. And share, share, share this program with everyone you know. Okay, are you going to wave bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Thanks, honey.
I loved the show.
Bye, everyone.